Management Committee, welcome to Met Transit. I'm glad everybody found their way. Hopefully a few of you took the bus or biked, but it's great that we could have this meeting in person. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Note that this whole meeting is live streamed. We have members of the public who are watching and listening, and they're very welcome. These microphones, these little buttons, they're actually live mics. So when you're not say whining, when you're talking to my friend Irene, the mic will pick that up. So just a note. Also, if anybody who is watching wants to know more about the project, I invite you to go to the website bluelineext.org. That's just one word, bluelineext.org. That's where all the presentations will be posted there, and you'll be able to kind of submit any questions. You can certainly welcome to comment on the proceedings. This is not a public hearing. We're really going to absorb, the CMC is going to absorb all the comments, the engagement process we've had along the way. But if anybody does want to make a comment, you can email Kirsten Yeager at KJERSTIN.Yeager, YAGER, at metrotransit.org. And if you missed that, you can always check with Sophia Guinness, and she'll point you the right direction. So let's start the meeting. Guess what? We're not going to have a roll call. We'll just go around the table. What a thought. And maybe we'll, rather than start by jurisdiction, we'll just go around the table and have people introduce themselves. And let's start with Councilmember Chambliss.
Councilmember Reva Chambliss, District 2 of Metropolitan Council.
Yes, speak up, please.
Councilmember Reva Chambliss, District 2 of Metropolitan Council.
Tanya West Hafner, City of Brooklyn Park City Council.
Jeff Lundy, Hennepin County, District 1.
Jillian Rosenquist, Golden Valley City Council, and I'm in for Mayor Shep Harris.
Jim Adams, Mayor of Crystal.
Rebecca Fabelme, City of Minneapolis, on the behalf of Mayor Fry.
Bill Blonigan, Robbinsdale Mayor.
Sarah Gondor, I'm here for MnDOT, stepping in for Mike Barnes.
Becca Thompson on behalf of the Minneapolis Park Board.
Gene Montanez, co-chair CAC, Robbinsdale.
Liz Maurice, staff.
Sophia Guinness, Blue Line staff.
Dan Solar, Hennepin County, Blue Line staff.
Ricardo Perez with Blue Line Coalition.
Felicia Perry, co-chair of Business Advisory Committee.
John Pacheco, District 6, Metro Council.
Irene Fernando, Hennepin County District 2 Commissioner and Rail Authority Chair.
And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Charlie Zolli, Chair of the Met Council, and I have the honor of chairing this Blue Line CMC. And I should also point out, Commissioner Fernando is the Vice Chair, so we're sitting here before you. Today's a big meeting. We're going to be considering the recommendation on the Blue Line alignment. Some call it the realignment. It's keeping this continuing project going, but after a lot of process, we're going to have a chance to really have a full discussion and consideration. But first, we have some other business items before us. We want to look and consider the minutes from April 21st that were sent out in advance. If there's any edits or comments or corrections, feel free to speak up. Otherwise, I would be happy to entertain a motion for approval.
I'd like to move approval of the minutes for April 22nd.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any more discussion, thoughts? If you do find something afterwards, feel free to call staff and we'll make sure that's noted. But for now, to approve the minutes, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. We're on to some committee reports, which we were just saying it's so great that we not only have the business and community advisory committees to be here today. They've made recommendations, and I know that the staff has captured a lot of comments on those recommendations for you in your the project record. But let's start, and great to have them in person. The Community Advisory Committee, and it's, I'm not sure who's giving it. We have the committee is Jason Greenberg and Jean Matenas. But Jean, are you giving the report from the Community Advisory Committee? And I know Felicia Perry's with us, who's going to give a report for the Business Advisory Committee.
You're up, Jason.
I guess so. I thought Jason was going to do it. I'll be brief. We put on paper what our recommendations were, and there was a consensus on it. Some of the recommendations were for now and in the future, and some of the things in the future for consideration after this is in place is if you build it, will they come? And we're asking for you, after it's in play, that you promote this to the point where it can be utilized by all the communities in the area.
Right. Thank you. Any questions for Jean and the committee? Right. Well, thank you for that, and thanks for your continuing, considerations, thought, and deliberations. Felicia, do you have a report?
Yes, great rising, everybody. Thank you so much, Chairman Zelli. The Business Advisory Committee met this Tuesday as well and also put in writing our recommendations. Overreaching kind of themes in our recommendation was that there was general support for the route recommendation, but there were several points of some of them are concern, and then some of them, just are areas of support. So we're hoping that everybody takes a moment to read over that and consider that as you're submitting the final draft report. The things I wanted to highlight were the environmental considerations, making sure that the work and documentation is accessible and understandable, particularly to all stakeholders involved, including community members and those who aren't necessarily in these rooms on a regular basis. And also various design considerations, particularly one that was discussed was on West Broadway and on 21st Avenue. That route recommendation was something particularly the need to engage with community and residents in that area. And the recommendation coming from the BAC was to essentially create a space where both residents and business owners can be in conversation and dialogue together about what happens there versus the separate conversations and recommendations coming, say, out of the business community versus those who say, live along 21st, such as myself. And there was also considerations around anti-displacement, again, elevating the concern around the timing and ensuring a recommendation to ensure that what's happening with the anti-displacement committee and their recommendations are happening real time along with this so that it's not a catch-up situation, that the urgency of the project moving forward, that same urgency be put and resourced into that anti-displacement work. And let's see here, I think that's all I wanted to particularly highlight. So please, just take a moment to read through, and there may be, I don't know, Sophia can tell me if there were any comments that might have come through, any additional comments?
None afterwards.
Okay, wonderful. Did I miss anything?
Got it all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And great comments, and some of them are ones we really have to keep in our minds. The idea that we're not doing a lot of studies while the train is leaving, and then not having enough time to actually have an effect along the way, and that idea that we're one community where we live, work, play, that's all interconnected. This isn't siloed, and I appreciate that comment too. Any other questions for Felicia and the business or any of the advisory committees at this point?
Chair,
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank the Business Advisory Committee and the Community Advisory Committee during the pandemic. You stuck with it all. You people who have other jobs and other responsibilities still stuck with the meetings and still here today. And so I just want to express my thanks because you're truly volunteers, and so we appreciate the work that you've done.
Great, thank you. Well, let's get into the substance of hearing a presentation on the route modification process and recommendation. But just to remind everyone, we've had this report, the initial recommendation since April 18th, and then there's been a comment period, 38-day comment period. We've had a lot of comments, and though we're going to have them summarized, we have, we have them available, and I've gone through them, and I know that not every word, but I think the staff has really captured a lot of the kind of the spirit and the substance behind a lot of the input. Also, we extended that comment period a little bit, particularly after the Lynn Park public meeting. We really want to give them more time for that full consideration. Now, having said that, Sophia, Dan, are you going to take us through
Yes.
where we are?
Yes, we are. And
There you go. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellie. At our last meeting, we walked through basically the details of our timeline and the in-depth aspects of our report, kind of the details of our recommendation. So I won't go through that again today because you are all familiar with that body of work. What Dan and I are going to highlight today is you got to go a little bit about the process, right? Because we're at this major step. Talk about the comments that we've received and how the project team is listening to what we've received throughout this process or has helped us. There's the comments I'll go through today. Some of it is very germane to the route itself, right, which is our big decision today. And then there's a lot of comments that we received that we call kind of our work plan, and I'll detail that in a little bit of a second, but it's highlighting what the community wants us to dig deeper into. And for us to dig deeper into those questions, we need to get through the steps today because we can't start our environmental work, we can't spend more engineering dollars until we really know our route. So that is what we're going to talk to you all about today. I just also want to express before we dive into the details is that the project team is very, very committed to engagement, working with the folks on this table to work with communities as well. And so, I'm going to present a lot of comments today, and we know that there are folks that want more engagement, right? And the whole point of this next step will also be to work more into those details. And that's part of why, we're staffing up the blue line so that we really can be responsive. So with that as context to the presentation, I'll dive in. So all of you have been with us since August of 2020 as we've pivoted this project. It was not easy. And it took a lot of discussion to, in that August through March timeframe to confirm what we were studying, what our project goals were, all of those details. And then in March of 2021, that was the first time we put the various routes out for viewing. There's more chairs at the table. And started to ask the community, what are we missing? Are we missing anything? And then kind of going into that. That culminated in a draft report where we purposely did not include a recommendation at that time. And that was for to let the community challenge our assessment before we made a recommendation, right? Because once you have a recommendation out, that's a harder thing to deal with, right? Whereas giving people the information to potentially see where we're going was part of the plan. And we adjusted based on some of what we received during that 45-day comment period, which then got us to our current comment period, as Chair Zelli outlined. It was a 38-day comment period. We received over 1,000 comments on this report, and they came in through our meetings that we hosted, as well as various ways for folks to comment online. And we tried to make commenting online easy. So, there was an interactive map. You could put geographic questions. There was a comment form, or you could email project staff. All of that was to give people ways to comment easily. And we framed up some questions for folks and actually encourage folks in a way to make this project accessible, right? If you're not a big English speaker, writing a whole long comment might be difficult. So we really tried to work with people, like just even tell us, do you support this route? Does it align with what you want? So a lot of our comments, when you go through that, some of them are very simple. And we wanted to capture that as well. And I had one more other point with that, but we asked basically to help people comment, and they could comment however they want. We kind of asked some framing questions just to kind of make the document more accessible, which was, do you agree with the route recommendation, why or why not? What else do you want your policymakers, all of you at the table today and the Hennepin County Met Council is when they make their steps, to know? And then finally, what do you want the project team to consider as we move the project forward? Like what would make this project better as we start to get into more of the details? So a lot of the comments kind of responded to those. This is kind of a really high-level overview, but we want to be very transparent about all the comments received, and so there is both every single word that we received in front of you, as well as a more in-depth comment summary in the addendum to the route modification report. And in that packet also includes kind of, we're working towards our project goals. So kind of theming out what we heard related to our project goals. But here's kind of a wheel of what we heard the most. And I do want to mention, because I would be remiss to Ricardo if I didn't call this out, is that you don't see anti-displacement on this wheel, and that's not because we didn't hear a lot about it. It's because some of these comments, when people are talking about other things, are also talking about potential displacement. And so that's part of why the staff in our addendum, and Dan will talk about this in a second, called that out more. So just wanted to mention that before I get into it. But we hear a lot of design-related questions in the feedback that we received, as well as safety. And safety is both about pedestrians and bicyclists getting to our stations, as well as just kind of thinking about the whole context in which we're working. Lot of about thinking further ahead, like what are you going to do with construction? Again, the simple comments of, do you support this, yes or no? Ideas about light rail designs, questions about our funding, and I'll just highlight a couple of them. So when we talk about general support or opposition, the kinds of feedback that we're receiving was, hey, this route serves people. It goes where it should go. It reaches major destinations. It improves transit to folks that need it the most and use our system the most, but also expands options for people. So hopefully more of our region rides more. A lot of the really just like don't do this project are around budget and is light rail a worthy investment and the overall context of doing projects. We hear a lot about street parking and impacts, and then corridor-wide comments about landscaping, traffic calming, easy, safe access, whatnot. And that is both in the context of basically all our roadways, or even in the city of Robbinsdale, thinking about how people are potentially crossing in the downtown area for that community cohesion. So it comes out in a lot of different forms. Kind of, and people wonder, there's a lot that we heard about, like noise and potential environmental impacts. And that's both the project itself, but also during construction. And those are things we can't answer right now, right? We have to get to the next step to be able to do that. Safety on our system, Metro Transit as a whole came through. We know Metro Transit knows that's a topic, and we're being very proactive right now. I have some wonderful colleagues working on some amazing initiatives around that right now. And we hear from our transit riders, and one of the things they tell us is, hey, make this line efficient. Make sure it's stopping where it needs to be, right? Don't just bypass us, but make this travel time competitive. Open the region to me. Dan and I can give you a whole bunch of anecdotal stories from people that we have talked to, especially those that are using our transit system quite heavily, that really lean into needing the options and trying to reach destinations that this project goes to that are difficult right now or take a lot of time, and expressing to us their personal stories about how improvements like that make real impact in their lives and their ability to operate in our world. And we have folks here today that will want to tell you that we need more engagement and that we should talk more about how we're doing a portion of our route. And Dan's going to Dan's going to walk us through that in a second, but just want to acknowledge that we heard that, and we are very committed to doing that, including basically getting through this process and starting to have many more conversations with them. Ms. Panu, Panu Vu, our outreach coordinator, who's sitting outside, I think, will be a partner in that process. And of course, the anti-displacement efforts. So with that, I will turn it over to Dan to talk about our recommendation.
Thanks, Sophia. So thanks, Chair and members. This map you see, this report that you have really wraps up some work that over the last 12 to 18 months we've tried to look at. The basic question was, is there a route to take further through the process that would allow us to extend the Blue Line extension in the northwest part of Hennepin County without using Burlington Northern Railroad. Many of you have been on this corridor management committee for years. You've seen and worked with us intently as our project team tried to advance the previous route. We know the background and the issues we've had with Burlington Northern, and therefore, as a corridor management committee, you gave us the direction to go and do this work. And so here we are now, that many months later, saying that this is our recommendation. Based on that work, this is our recommendation of the next step and how to advance this project. So for that, as we walk from the north part stays the same as we've talked about before, essentially the link along West Broadway in Brooklyn Park with 4 station areas at Brooklyn Boulevard, at 85th, which is North Hennepin Community College, at 93rd, and at Oak Grove Parkway, kind of the north end at the Target North Campus, north of 610. That design is essentially done. We need to dust that off. We need to, re-verify a number of things, but essentially the alignment on the north end, where we weren't on railroad right away before, is going to be the same. The second segment, the longest segment of this, is really from where that kind of notch takes place, just south of Brooklyn Boulevard, there in the south part of Brooklyn Park. That's from there down to the Robbinsdale, Minneapolis border, right around North Memorial Hospital. There, we are recommending that LRT be co-located with County Road 81. Not on the railroad alignment, but on County Road 81 instead. In some areas, like up in Crystal, that's essentially the railroad is adjacent to the county road, and so it's essentially moving the right-of-way or moving the alignment from the railroad right-of-way to the roadway right-of-way. As we get further south, the railroad starts to separate from 81, and so when we come into downtown Robbinsdale and when we get to the Minneapolis border, they're separated, so it's not as immediately close. But we're recommending, again, a station in and around 63rd, where we had one before, near the park and ride there in South Brooklyn Park, a station at Bass Lake Road in Crystal, a station in downtown Robbinsdale in some area, 40th, 41st, in that general area, and then a station at the border, North Memorial Hospital, Lowry, Theodore Wirth Parkway, where those pieces come together. That is that piece. So then, when we come into Minneapolis, as everyone knows, we evaluated kind of is West Broadway or is Lowry the route to select. There were a lot of pros and cons for both. They actually both were, neither one of them was poor, but in general, the recommendation is to continue the route on West Broadway through North Minneapolis with a station in and around Penn and a station in and around kind of the Fremont, Emerson area with a D-line connection and the kind of commercial business area there. Still to be determined kind of how that goes. You'll also see there's a little bit of a larger circle there where the idea of Does everything go on West Broadway, roadway, sidewalks, pedestrians, and LRT? Or do we use a parallel West Broadway and 21st between Irving and Lindale as a balance? And of course, we've got numerous options in there. Those will be part of our analysis, part of our environmental work to determine how that best fits. We'll be working with the business community there. The original then recommendation was to connect Lindale and West Broadway with Target Field Station. We'd identified Lindale, and then somehow either using 7th Street or Lindale and 6th Avenue to connect to Target Field Station. We'll talk a little bit about, on the next slide, about expanding that analysis on the south end to talk about bringing on the east side of 94 as well as a potential connection to Target Field Station. So to come from West Broadway, maybe over to Washington and into downtown as well as a possibility. So that's a summary of the recommendation. That's the summary of what we're recommending to go forward. We identified a report, but then we identified now an addendum to go with the report that basically summarizes a number of things that we heard and makes them part of the overall report. So first, I want to acknowledge 2 resolutions that we received, one from the city of Minneapolis and one from the city of Robbinsdale. So Minneapolis's resolution identified support for the West Broadway route, but emphasized a couple of things, emphasized the continued work on anti-displacement and the continued support and movement of those efforts, and also recognized the continued need to look at alternatives besides just Lindale to connect West Broadway and downtown. Why not Washington? You might see a sign that says that. That's part of what that recommendation is. So the city has put that in their support and in their resolution. City of Robbinsdale's resolution, again, summarizes concerns about building light rail in and as part of the Highway 81 roadway through downtown Robbinsdale. And we recognize that as we advance the project. We're committed to continuing to work with the city about how to preserve the character and background and feel and operation of downtown Robbinsdale with the potential of including the LRT route as well. So those were 2 pieces. The other adds we added to the addendum are what you see on the screen. Again, a lot of feedback we got from the Lynn Park neighborhood about looking at other options. And so we've added that as part of our work. So we'll be doing that as part of our environmental work. And then also the timing and the need to emphasize that anti-displacement work needs to be done, if not before, certainly what we're recommending is now as part of the environmental work as we advance this forward. We had our first anti-displacement working group on Saturday. It was a very good event. It was really well done. We had really good turnout and a lot of good feedback. And we just simply talked there about the learnings that as the projects have advanced in this region, the idea of development associated with LRT has just advanced earlier with it. When Hiawatha was built, redevelopment happened after the line was open. When Central was built, ideas of development around the line started to happen, not after it was open, but after the FFGA was in place. And on Southwest and on the Blue Line extension previously, because this region has actually built these pieces, the idea of what's going to happen next to the LRT begins even earlier. And so the time is now to commit to continuing to work on how we not only build the line, but how we build the community and protect the community with it as part of it. And we think that doing that during the environmental phase of this project is absolutely the right time. So what this recommendation does is actually allows and permits us as a staff to do 7 years worth of work. And, that's why That's why we do this work, I guess, is to get more work. And so that's really what we're doing, is we're kind of getting ourselves back to the starting line. We're not at construction. We're not letting a contract in the next couple of weeks. We're beginning the hard and difficult work of implementing an LRT project. And we're not at square zero or step zero, but we're not far down the line. So when you see we're here, like at the Disney World, well, we're here and we're a long ways away from the end. And so we want to move into the green box, which allows us to do several things. It allows us to begin the environmental assessment work as part of the project to address issues like noise and others, and I talk about that on the next slide. It allows us to begin the design work to work towards a municipal consent plan, which we will need to bring to each of our communities at about a 30% design level. We're maybe at about, Northern Brooklyn Park, we're at about a 70% design level. On some of this, we're at maybe 3 to 5%. Got a lot of work to go. Before we get to municipal consent in maybe a little more than a year from now, we've got a lot of work and a lot of meetings and a lot of background to get through to put that plan together. We also want to begin the stationary planning process in conjunction with that, so we're understanding what do communities want to do around the stations, what kind of land use efforts should be in place. So we will work with each of our municipalities on that. Some of it is already done. In Brooklyn Park, in Crystal, Bass Lake Road Station is not moved far. So maybe it's more about dusting off, reevaluating. Crystal has done already with Becker Park, with some of the work on the streetscaping, has implemented a lot of the pieces. And so those things can continue. On the southern end, some of the stations are in completely different areas. And so that work will need to be much greater pulled forward. So that's what we're into next. You see on the top, anti-displacement recommendations and community engagement. They are not one bucket pieces. They are throughout the project. And so, the anti-displacement effort is not about making recommendations. It's about implementing recommendations. And so you see implementation because the policy changes we want to make as part of this need to be part of this as well. So then, what does the green box mean? What's next? The environmental documentation includes all of the kind of things that can impact the property and what mitigation measures we would put in place. So things like noise and vibration, things like property impacts and right-of-way acquisition, soil, water, air, those kind of things, as well as traffic movements, connections, safety, all of those pieces, as well as environmental justice as well. And we're working through some very critical communities here in the northwest part of Hennepin County. And so environmental justice becomes a big piece of our environmental work as well. So that's what we'll be doing on the environmental side, continuing design work, continuing this, and ongoing public engagement throughout it all. So
real quickly, Chair, I got the note that people streaming can't see us all in the room. So just want to note that we had newcomer Councilmember Ellison joining us as well, so that the public that's watching knows who's here. Sorry.
And who does he represent?
City of Minneapolis.
Ward 5.
Chair, that's our
Thank you, Dan. Thank
recommendation.
you.
That's our summary. I turn it back to you.
Thank you, and welcome, Councilmember Ellison. Good to know we're not in Disney World, but they make a long line seem entertaining, so you're keeping us going. Honestly, thanks to staff, Dan, Sophia, this past little process, we've done a lot of engagement, a lot of comments, and I just before we kind of open it up, just a couple of questions to clarify. When we think about this phase, the green phase, some of these alignments are not precise. What I'm hearing is when you say West Broadway, that's a combination of 21st Street, West Broadway. We're still working that out. And so we're still in that area, particularly Minneapolis. We're kind of still engaging, thinking, and honing in on what the right solution is.
I kind of equate it this way. The alignment, the route recommendation identifies the more than just general, but general route that we want to, that the LRT would travel. But by the time we get to the municipal consent plan, we would identify, for example, exactly where stations would go and how they would be configured, exactly what street we would be on, things like left side, right side, center running, elevated. And all of those things are still somewhat open in terms of, do we make a curve here? Do we make a curve here? Do we put the station on this block? Do we make it split? All those are still open items. And then by the time we get to 30% plan and we take it to municipal consent, we want to know that most of those things, still not final designs, but most of those elements are in place.
Great. Well, at this phase, let's open up just to questions. Before we consider this resolution, let's just make sure we kind of got some of what's nagging in our heads with Sophia and Dan. And hats off to the staff, Nick and others. There have been a lot of people in partnership with many of our partners. Many people here on this table have got us to this point. So, we have a lot of expertise in the room. So thank you. Well done. And any questions for Dan and Sophia at this point?
I have comments. Is now appropriate for comments?
Sure. So is appropriate.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I have some comments. So I just want to thank staff for and all the community for getting us to this point. Just as to kind of recenter, I think for those who have been a part of the last 24 months, this really comes because of decades of work to get the Blue Line extension from downtown to the northwest suburbs. And especially, I'll speak for Hennepin District 2, many residents feel like we've been here before, where there has been government promises and there has been missteps. And so I want to acknowledge that exists. And with the commitment from this table and many, many others, we are seeking to incorporate the feedback that we've received on the process as well as feedback on the actual route. And so I just want to acknowledge that right out of the gate. The city of Golden Valley was previously on the alignment, for example, and is now no longer on the alignment that exists today. In partnership with the city of Golden Valley and MnDOT and Metro Transit and Met Council and many others, there's a effort around setting the 55 corridor, which was just at a BRT meeting earlier this week, which was very heartening, including the pedestrian improvements that were promised for the city of Minneapolis. And so I want to state that while this has a lot of excitement, there's immense progress. In 24 months, immense progress. And there are many, many residents who, for very well-earned reasons, feel overlooked or left out. And it is the commitment of, as Sophie had mentioned, the green box, as Dan has been calling this. Not only is there room for more engagement, it is a requirement for us to be deepening the engagement. And so I just want to acknowledge that, because these are people's homes, livelihoods. This is where people spend time, and that is what we have been able to speak about virtually, and we arrive here with this collective conversation. And so as we enter today's room, I want to express that there are efforts with respect to that, and certainly want to call out, as Dan had mentioned, all considerations between Target Field Station and West Broadway. So there are many, many right-of-ways to the east of 94, as Charlie mentioned, to the west, and those will all be considered, and really, really appreciate the feedback and the vulnerability that comes with feedback. And again, trust Sophia and team to bring that into the process and to care for that well. A year and a half to 2 years gets us to January to June of 2024. So that's another kind of recentering period. That is a long time from the viewpoint of residents. Maybe for some engineers that seems like not enough time, but the point is we are going to keep pushing forward. I want to echo Felicia's idea around making this even more accessible. So maybe we break down the green box into particular decision points for municipalities who often have land use considerations, as well as feedback points for residents. Also want to highlight other feedback from that Felicia had mentioned. Great idea on residents and business owners and dialogue. I think especially in the virtual environment, there was a need to focus. And as we are re-emerging in person and in community, what are appropriate ways that we can intersect and have folks in the same room to have that discussion and that challenge and that back and forth. And then I would absolutely welcome, and perhaps I'll put this on my to-do list in the community works effort, but to Ricardo's point, how do we make actionable this rolling implementation concept with respect to anti-displacement? So when an idea comes forward, how is it made actionable? And for which jurisdiction should that be considered by, or how do we turn that on slide 12, that chart, there's that top anti-displacement above and community engagement above. How do we make actionable that recommendations to implementation? So those are a few points of reaction. And again, I just really want to thank everyone for getting to this point. A couple of years ago, we weren't sure if we were going to still get to proceed with this project. Honestly, this is all, what we're not talking about as much as the Federal Transit Administration and all of the federal guidelines that allow us to continue this work. And we weren't sure a couple years ago, and now we're at this point where we get to continue thinking about and pursuing the actions related to this very, very important work. And so didn't mean to have it be a speech, but here I am. There you go. There you go, Chair. And again, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well said. I really appreciate you. There's always time for your comments and thoughts, and you really summed it up really well. I can't believe how far, I mean, I keep saying we've had a busy year. Well, you lose track of time during these COVID years that we've been at this since August of 2020, and that was really like, we need to rethink, and we have, and with a lot of great efforts here around the table. We're here kind of to consider this resolution, so I actually would offer as a way of process that we have a motion and a second, and then a firm discussion of that resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Thank you, Commissioner Lundy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second to adopt the recommended route modification. And we really have time for not just some observation comments, but questions. And Dan's still here at the table, and this is a serious a step. And I think Irene said it best. We're not just entering a box that will come out 2 years later. We're entering a series of more engaged points along the way. And it's just that I guess the temperature is now just amped up that much more and the seriousness and the granularity of these decisions get more precise. So, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to, as a person, I know there's a few others here, Mayor Adams as well, and have been through the green box before. This is our second run through the green box. And so many of the questions, I know in Brooklyn Park, so much of that design where we talk about it's 70% designed, it came through the work of the green box where we had tons of questions. Residents had lots of concerns. Pedestrian crossings, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to do things? The city did things above and beyond, like we wanted uniform fencing, things that were outside the project, but stuff the city took on. And so the green box is it would be my second run through it. But so many of the questions that people have asked can only be answered through the work that's going to be done in this environmental assessment. How are you going to handle my street? I want to know how I'm going to cross. Great question. We have to get into that by entering this. And so I believe that, today's resolution to move forward allows us to start to get those answers. And the other part is, and I shared Blue Line Coalition, I just want to thank them. I had a great meeting with them, is there is federal money available for some of this anti-displacement work. You know what we can't do? We can't get access to that until we have a draft route that reflects the people that we're trying to assist along this. So part of it is the feds, they're like, hey, they have lots of rules, right? And some of those rules have this half a mile boundary, which means you can't use money outside of a half a mile. Well, the route the only adopted route we have is through Golden Valley. And the draft route has to be adopted so that we can start to go to the Fed, start to access other funds, and start to talk about what we can do for anti-displacement. So it's a really important step in another series of steps, but it is one that we have to get done. And the other part, and I shared with Blue Line Coalition, is, and also I want to thank the leadership of Councilmember Ellison. is talking about how can we take public land that we either own or will acquire during the construction and use that for community good. And that community good is anti-displacement in my mind, but some of that work has to be identified. We have to work with the legislators. We're working on a legislative meeting this summer. And then also, I think as important is we have had, my staff and I have had conversations with the people who originated the Central Corridor Funding Collaborative for between Minneapolis and St. Paul. There was public money that was harnessed to assist businesses, residential for investment, low interest loans, forgivable loans. And they all told us until you get that route adopted, you can't really start working about putting the collaborative together. So there's some steps that have to be done sequentially. And for us to do some of the things that I know we need access to funds that are going to be for investment. We need access to plans. We need people to have policies and intent that's defined by a policy that everybody agrees on. This allows us to get there. So I'm enthusiastic about this because there's so many things that I know people in Robbinsdale, Crystal, and Brooklyn Park, residents up and down have, in my district, have asked that I can't get the answers until we get to this step. And so I'm eager and hopeful for that and continue to look for partnership with Councilman Earls and the Blue Line Coalition. I think there's so many common things that we want to do. And so I'm excited.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts, questions? Oh, go ahead, Ricardo.
Thank you. So yeah, no, thank you. It's great to be here, and we're gonna have prepared a little something, but I'm just gonna I guess, talk it out. Setting the mood. I got the mood set right. Okay.
Candles are.
Okay, get ready. This is gonna be good. No, just kidding. But I mean,
very dramatic.
I didn't plan it. I swear.
Yeah, I think you coordinated that.
Oh, Nick is my guy. He's the one that's doing all the work behind the scenes. All right. Well, that was special. But anyways. But it is kind of historic, right? Like, and 2 years ago, it's not like it was any other day in the city of Minneapolis, right? Like 2 years ago, like stuff was happening out in the streets, you know, and that is like 100% real. And that energy from back then accompanied this news of the route change, right? So for Blue Line Coalition, and as most of you know, we're a 14-member organizations that work with communities that live, work, go to school across the whole corridor. And for us, we are disappointed that we weren't able to put anti-displacement solutions before the route modification, right? That is a reality. And it doesn't come from an opposition stance. We don't oppose the project, but we do remember collectively all of the other projects in our region that have disproportionately hurt communities of color with our tax dollars, like the Rondon neighborhood, like also Memorial Highway, and many more, right? So with that knowledge, we act. We cannot separate that memory from what we're doing today. But we do support the idea of the project, you know? We welcome the idea of investment. We welcome the idea of creating pathways for micro and small businesses to go from renting to owning. We welcome the idea of safe, reliable transportation for our community members. We know people today that cannot take their kids to the mall on the weekend because they don't have a way to get there. So we believe that we do deserve the nice things. We really do, 100%. However, in order to stay congruent with our efforts, we cannot really vote yes right now due to the timing of the issues, right? However, we do feel that we feel hopeful about change. We do believe it's possible, and we do celebrate the help of Councilmember Ellison, of Commissioner Fernando, Commissioner Lundy. We met with Representative Omer, with Senator Smith. Everybody believes in anti-displacement and in the equity work that we're all saying that we want to do, right? But we do feel an urgency issue, right? That every day that goes by, speculation can eat that power that our dollars can have today, right? So we do urge you all to take concrete, cohesive, combined steps to address this issue right now, not in a year and a half, but today, because this can truly catalyze our community's potential, right? We don't want to be displaced. We want to use this opportunity to break patterns. So that being said, I do really appreciate that we're seeing some changes already, right? Like before when we saw the timeline, we didn't see engagement or anti-displacement. And I totally agree with Commissioner Fernando. It'll be great to see how all of the lines are talking to each other, because that's what we hear out there. People are confused. What are you engaging me about? Is this about the route, about anti-displacement? Is it going to be about environmental review? So I think that injecting as much clarity as possible right now will be essential for people to continue to participate authentically and meaningfully throughout the whole process, because a lot of people are still uncertain right now. So that's what we kind of like came prepared to share with you, and we do appreciate your time. And yeah, that's what we have.
Thank you for your really thoughtful comments, and we've heard them echoed, but you know, actions will build trust, not just the words and intentions, and the time is now. So
Thank you.
Other thoughts? Oh, please, go ahead. Gail.
I'm Councilmember Jillian Rosenquist from Golden Valley, and as Commissioner Fernando pointed out, this is a transitional day for our community. We started out as one of the original partners for this. I, in fact, entered around the first original route discussion and represented the city in station area planning. And so I've gone through this whole process and now sit here as an elected official. And we recognize that, but we also recognize that cities don't work in isolation, that we are part of a region and we are stronger when the region is stronger. And adding public transit to our Northwest corridor is going to be good for Golden Valley because it's good for our region, and we are just a partner in that region. And while we're sad that identified needs through this process, specifically for me, for the differently able to utilize the Courage Kenny Institute in Golden Valley are going to be without this kind of connection. And so we remain at the table in some form because we continue to want to advocate for those identified needs. As we go through this process again, we identified needs that are connected to Golden Valley, and we want to make sure that they are able to through some kind of spoke, and I really appreciate Commissioner Fernando's leadership when we talk about bus rapid transit on 55, because that again is a complementary line for this. We want to make sure that those identified needs are not overlooked, that they continue to be important in this region because they are community members in this region in need of transit. And we've got to find out how we can continue to serve folks like that, even though the route is deviating from its original line. So anyway, we as a city remain committed to robust public transportation in our region and are supported with the continued progress and move of this line.
Thank you for the comments, and I will kind of just follow up on Commissioner Fernando's comments that although Highway 55 is not part of this, may not be part of the scope of this particular line, that transit is an interconnected system of lines. It's never about one line. If we're building a backbone, it's there to support a lot of other tributaries, and that's really not lost, I think, on any of the government entities here and partners. So really appreciate you continuing to be at the table with us and to ensure that some of those connections aren't lost. Other thoughts, questions? Oh, Councilmember Allison.
Yeah, just want to thank everyone, especially staff who've put this together. I also want to, I was pretty nervous about the potential of infrastructure. Still have a lot of apprehensions. A lot of my constituents are here with their apprehensions, and that resonates with me. In the way that Ricardo was talking about, those are all talking points that really resonate with me. But early on, when I had one of my earliest conversations with Commissioner Fernando, the discussions around anti-displacement were already there, right? And the commitments and the way that anti-displacement work and anti-gentrification work has become a part of the regular lexicon of this group has really impressed me, and I'll admit surprised me. As a young elected in Minneapolis, it felt very early on that it was that these concepts were sort of like, they were niche, right? They were kind of cutesy, like, okay, yeah, it's better to just kind of have let market forces do what they do, in your city or through your neighborhood. And I think that the fact that the idea of that is changing is for the better. And so really, one of the things that I looked at this draft resolution to just make sure is to make sure that there's nothing in it that contradicts the resolution we just passed at the city. And I'm sure city staff will text me if I'm wrong, but I don't see anything that contradicts our resolution, and so that has me feeling pretty encouraged to support. And so I just want to reiterate that this kind of infrastructure can really be. It's not inherently good or bad on its own. It'll be good if we make the investment in anti-displacement. I know the city's committed to that work. I'm feeling like this group is committed to that work. But it can be a real harm if we drop the ball on that front. And so I'm excited to chart a course for municipal consent, right? But also I know that all of us will be studious in making sure that our neighborhoods are getting what they need out of it. And speaking of losing this route along 55, I know that a lot of the communities, again, still in the ward, are feeling that loss as well in North Minneapolis. And so I'm going to insist that we continue to engage all the communities along the former route to make sure that there's a feeling of some kind of remedy there as we work to get the current route to get it right. So just wanted to make those comments and to thank everyone who kind of got us here. Yeah, it looked really touch and go just a couple of years ago about whether or not this infrastructure would happen, period. And so the fact that we're re-entering the green space, that was a little bit before my time, but the fact that we're re-entering the green space I think is really encouraging. And so yeah, just wanted to thank you all, and I do think I'm prepared to be supporting this resolution today.
Thank you for your comments. And as you point out so readily, that our work is really beginning. Even though we've worked hard, there's a lot to do that we have to continue to stay together on. Any other? Oh, Riva, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to hear from the cities and all the organizations at this table about what's really important for their cities and their communities and their businesses. I believe as we looking at this modification report and making a decision on the resolution, that it's very important that as we look at community engagement at the top of this process, which will happen throughout the process until we get to construction, that we expand and assess the route alternatives within this route modification report. That includes 21st Avenue, that includes the route from West Broadway alternatives to downtown, and any other impacts in terms of route alternatives. We did an assessment already where we looked at different categories of impacts on each of these route alternatives. I think we should do the same thing for 21st Avenue and the alternate routes to downtown Minneapolis. That would give us more time to get more in-depth in terms of the engagement. So I would definitely be supporting us moving forward. I remember, I have a great long-term memory, not so great short-term memory sometimes, but when I was 10 years old, I remember houses going down in preparation for the Blue Line. And then when I graduated from college, I saw houses being built and no Blue Line. So I am very excited to see that this project has finally gotten to the place where we can see in 4 years that there is going to be an integrated regional route. So I want to support, but with a recommendation that we expand the engagement, the assessment of the route alternatives, and make sure that we put anti-displacement efforts front and center. Not something that's in the background, but front and center. We should see a representative in support of anti-displacement at this table and continue that representation throughout this entire process. That would be an act of good faith. We need to move beyond just engagement to equity action.
Hey, thank you. And that's a great call to action. Any other thoughts? Mayor?
So, yeah, Mayor Blonigan of Robbinsdale. Probably not a surprise that I, on behalf of Robbinsdale, will not be voting in favor of this. And at the end of this talk, which I suspect will change none of your votes, which is okay, and I want to tell you why we're doing this. At the end of this, I'm going to ask you to do something, and that is to at least later, at a different meeting, go to our congressional delegation, Senators Smith, Klobuchar, Representative Omar, and even Governor Walz, and say, hey, try to do something to bring BNSF back to where they promised to be. 1981, started on the Robbinsdale City Council. I think I was in the green box sometime in the 1980s. So to come enthusiastically supporting this project for decades, whoa, it's such a deflation to right now get to the point where, yeah, all that we talked about for decades is not going to happen. We're not going to go in the corridor that Robbinsdale established in the 1880s, the rail corridor, to have light rail. We're going to go in the car corridor to have light rail. So, other than maybe Crystal and parts of Minneapolis, Robbinsdale is the most affected by this change. The community prior to this change was highly supportive of light rail. And a recent survey has shown it's flip-flopped. The community of Robbinsdale is highly against this alignment of the light rail. BNSF has reneged on their long-standing commitment that that they would cooperate in this corridor, and we know that the reasons that they are giving are not true. They are not having to do with public safety. All over the United States of America, they have co-located, and they have co-located in the Southwest under similar circumstances. So the staff here has rightly attempted to bring BNSF back to the table, and I don't doubt anything they say or any of their efforts, but what we have not done, this group has not done, we have not gone to our congressional delegation and said, we would like you to try to put pressure on BNSF. You have billions of dollars of infrastructure that's going to railroads in various different bills right now. There has got to be a carrot, there has got to be a stick that can bring BNSF and maybe their cohorts who will pressure them, other railroads, back to the table on this. You know, we can put a person on the moon. We can build a 35W replacement bridge in a matter of months, but we apparently can't overrule the supreme law of the land that is set down for us by BNSF. It's in the Constitution. They have statutory protections, but that does not mean that we cannot at least ask, as this group, our congressional delegation, to do something about this. Now, that may not work, but we have to try. And so at a future meeting, that's what I will be bringing, is a resolution that I hope people support. Senator Smith, Senator Klobuchar, Representative Omar, Governor Walz, I will support all of them in their elections, whether they go with us or not on this. I am supporters of them, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't ask them to speak truth to power. BNSF does not represent the people of the United States of America. They do not represent the people of this particular area. And at a minimum, we should, as a group, say, hey, congressional people, please go to BNSF and do what you can, fight the fight, do something for us. I want to emphasize also that Robbinsdale is not messing with any of your city alignments. Whatever Minneapolis decides is your city alignment, we're not recommending we go back to the old. Your decisions on your city are what you what you determine. We're not messing with yours, and we're not trying to do that. We hear that, so let's say we went back, there was some point of leverage over BNSF, and we went back with respect to at least Robbinsdale, the original alignment. My gosh, that will delay this. Well, will it? Robbinsdale, I believe, was at the 70% or thereabouts engineering position before we went to this, and say it's only 50%. I know it's not the 3 to 5% that we're talking about through Minneapolis. We were already engineered on that corridor way ahead of where Robbinsdale is engineered right now. So again, I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you at least support us with a resolution, hey, congressional people, try.
Thank you, Mayor, and I think speak for all of us. We understand your frustration, and we look forward to having that conversation.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a question, and it's related to Robbinsdale's recommendation to continue with BNSF. And the question is related to the cost of what it would cost to have a secant wall of protection down that corridor would be, I think that is a new factor of information that should be considered by Robbinsdale. And also, we do need to look at this as a corridor-wide project, because if there is an issue with the old route that would affect the entire regional route, I would ask that Robbinsdale give that some consideration and look at this as a regional project.
So yeah, you're right, and it probably costs $125 million to build a wall in the southwest, and it probably cost $100 million plus to go under somewhere where it didn't really need to go under somewhere, and we're still having problems there. I question whether that is necessary, but again, I still think that it would have been, and it still will be cheaper, $125 million wall or not in the corridor that we have to go there than to go down West Broadway, West Broadway in Robbinsdale, which is the same as Highway 81 in certain areas, and have our businesses end their existence and things like that. So, but your point is well taken, and now I suspect you're not a person that I changed the vote of.
I don't know, Bill. Anyway, good debates and to be continued. Becca, did you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry, Becca Thompson. I would support your idea to go back. I also live very close to Robbinsdale and understand the impact in that community. And so that's my comment. My question now to everybody, I suppose. The West Broadway corridor, we know, is incredibly narrow. There's currently construction over Victory Memorial at Highway 81, which is, I mean, I just was speaking with neighbors yesterday. I'm like, oh yeah, and then the blue line's coming through, and then it'll be in perpetual construction. Do we have a timeline of when we're going to choose like 21st or West Broadway or Washington or Lyndale, right? I know we're in the green. Are we setting forth like we want this done by X day or by this meeting, or at least have a recommendation, or is it just is it gonna be the 1980s all over again, where it's like 30 years from now and we still haven't decided? Do we have a strict timeline on when we're gonna choose those little micro things? Because there is a lot of community concern along that corridor for all these little micro spots in Minneapolis, which it seems like we have larger arcing concerns about 81 and the rail but then the brass tacks within where we are, Ward 5, my district, is all the devil's in the details. So do we have a time frame on that?
Devil's in the details, yeah, absolutely. Dan, do you want to pick that up?
Thanks, Chair. Chair Zelli, Park Commissioner Thompson, the route recommendation gets us into the environmental and design process. And so a key measure in this state of Minnesota about advancing a project is the idea of municipal consent. That's a statute. And the statute is that the communities have an opportunity to approve a municipal consent plan at about that 30% range. In other words, don't advance the design to 100% and get ready to go to bids without getting that support. But don't ask the city to take a vote now on the project and then never get a say again. So I put that 30% time frame, which we hope to arrive at in a year and a couple of months from now, when we will, as I said before, and we talked a little bit about Minneapolis, but it's more than just that. We've got some design decisions around the interchange or at-grade options at Bass Lake Road in Crystal. We've got design things to work out about how we connect at Lowry, North Memorial Hospital, Grand Rounds, how we connect there. The Lindale, Washington piece, the 21st and West Broadway piece. Those are all elements that, as well as we still have, downtown Robbinsdale or Emerson Fremont. Is the station here? Is it here? Is it center platform? Is it split? And how does it? Those are the things that we'll want to advance over this time so that when we get to a 30% plan, we've got the ability to have each of the municipalities, the Park Board, Met Council, and Hennepin County, and this body all take an action to say, now we have a much clearer definition of what the project is. So the route recommendation recommends us, what it's giving us is guidelines on now doing more work. And so locking in a lot of those details will take place over that time. So from a timeline standpoint, a year, and then year and a half, and that's done at the same time and in conjunction with the environmental analysis, so that by the time we also reach that, we're able to actually commit to specific mitigation measures to mitigate the environmental impacts of the project as well. Those things come together.
Great. Did that get your
Yeah, thank
question?
you.
Yeah. All right, any other questions, thoughts? Councilmember
One quick
Ellison.
question.
Yeah.
Councilmember Chambliss made a couple of points, and I was just curious, was that a motion to amend the resolution in any way, or because I would support that motion, but I just wasn't sure.
It's support for a motion to amend the resolution.
Okay, cool. Cool. I'm happy to, just because I know we would have to put that in writing somehow. So if you need any support in putting that, I'm happy to try to help you work on amending the resolution, because I'm assuming we'd have to do that in the next few minutes here.
Yes, I think if you would want to take that as we have a motion on the floor, but we want to amend, so somebody can tell me if I'm doing this wrong, but I think you have an amendment, and I think if the person who proposed the motion, we can consider that as an amendment. And we could work on the language, or we could say the sense of what you said, and I don't know if Satya or Liz, you were able to kind of come up with something that we could look at.
And I'd also encourage, Chair, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
in the addendum to the report, I think there's some of what Councilmember Chambliss is trying to direct us. We tried to capture, so maybe we can, that's available as well for reference.
And to the extent that the addendum is a part of the resolution that we are considering, maybe that's the place to maybe make adjustments or maybe it speaks to it. Can we get that addendum on the screen?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
perhaps Councilmember Chambliss could repeat, because there's only three resolving clauses. There's only three resolving clauses, and so, Mr. Chair, if Councilmember Chambliss might be able to repeat which, or direct us as to which resolving clause the amended language would reside within, that could assist.
We have a little working team here.
Chair, may I read what's in the route addendum for consideration as well, since we didn't have it fully queued up for the screen.
Okay.
But it's many public comments voiced concern and questions related to the connecting segments between Target Field and West Broadway. Many public comments voiced concern and questions related to the connecting segments between Target Field Station and West Broadway. While the recommendation of using West Broadway still stands, the project is also recommending continued evaluation of other alignment options and station locations between downtown Minneapolis and West Broadway. These options will be evaluated for technical feasibility as well as consistency with project purpose and need and project principles. Broader public engagement on this topic will continue throughout the next year of this project. So kind of the idea that we will, staff is specifically recommending to you all that we take a deep dive on that segment, and that public engagement be a very core element of that process. So we intended to hopefully have that captured in the addendum that we provided for all of you. It's maybe not as explicit in the resolution itself. We tried to make the resolution more about our steps forward.
But as I understand, the motion we have on the floor includes the addendum as
Correct.
part of the resolution.
It is specifically called out in the resolving clauses.
Right.
Because we were kind of talking, to be clear, what my motion is about is to expand the engagement and the assessment of the route alternatives. For example, from West Broadway to Minneapolis, to downtown Minneapolis, and 21st Avenue, or any other of those, as Ms. Thompson said, those micro route alternatives, and evaluate and report on those. So in the same way that we reported and evaluated Lowry against West Broadway as an alternative. So that's what I'm asking.
Somebody capture that.
Be it further resolved that we do focus public engagement around the 21st option and the connection between West Broadway and downtown Minneapolis.
Thanks.
Yep, that's it.
I would accept that as a friendly.
Thank you.
Amendment.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know this second.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
So-
fine, yeah. Works for me.
And so we won't have to vote on the amendment because it's accepted, I think, from the original motion. But we're going to get the language just right, so make sure that we're capturing what you said.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
As a point of clarification, which I think this makes a lot of sense. So the addendum that Sophia read out loud does incorporate the areas that Councilmember Chambliss has referenced, but I think what I'm hearing differently from the Councilmember's amendment, which I think was accepted, is to ensure that it's at the same robustness and diligence as the Broadway versus Lowry route. So those green grids and that level of due diligence and robustness. And so even though it might be called out in the addendum, verbally what I heard from the council member, which I fully support, is that same level of robustness. Is that
That is
correct?
accurate, yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair and council member.
Thank you. So Sophia and Liz, are you're working on it, so I want to make sure we give you time to kind of capture that thought.
We're pretty close, Chair. The consider the committee thoughts. I asked that we have language up on the screen and to consider the committee's thoughts.
Robust analysis. Be it further resolved that we expand public engagement and do robust analysis between downtown Minneapolis and West Broadway along 21st Avenue.
Does that also include along, we're talking Glendale versus Washington as well? Or you just talking about 21st?
Between
Downtown to West Broadway is the Lindale, Washington consideration.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure we had clarification.
And then, Mr. Chair, at the end, eventually a semicolon at the end of that instead of a period to mirror what the other resolved clauses do.
Thank you, Mayor. I know there's got to be somebody in the room who's keeping us honest, and that's you.
Thank you. That captures it.
Now, I know Mayor Adams, you had your hand up, and I haven't forgotten, so.
All right, thank you.
Pleasure.
You know, there's no secret in terms of our experience in Crystal, how it's gone. We do have some trust issues, and I was really hoping before we would get to this point that some of the trust issues would be resolved. I don't feel that it has. I'm not in support of this line because I'm not ready to move forward because of that trust issue. We've got three basic issues that we are not confident that are going to be addressed. The one that I've spoke most about is the pedestrian bridge crossing. Obviously, that's going to be in the green part is going to get sorted out. I understand that. I've been told that over and over. That doesn't change the fact that when we've been told things that it has not occurred. Transit inside the city was another issue that we brought up. We have a station in Crystal in this alignment. We have no supporting transit buses within the city. To get anywhere from Crystal, it's probably about an hour and a half bus ride. It doesn't function well inside of transit. We have an awful lot of different communities inside our borders that do rely solely, and they take a huge part of their lives going to and from work. They're not allowed to pick up 2 part-time jobs because the transit isn't feasible for that. We have a huge recovery community in Crystal, and those are people who have to rely on that transit, and that's not being served, much less all the other people in the community. You know, one of the most favorable things in Crystal is that the light rail is going to get people down to the stadiums. I don't think that's the purpose. I don't think that's what this is about. I think this is about everyday living. Traffic lanes, we've asked over and over to preserve our traffic lanes. And it's not much different than Robbinsdale in terms of it moving from a rail corridor to a traffic vehicle corridor. We've asked to have those preserved as is, and we've seen everything but. So at this point, the trust hasn't been built. In terms of Robbinsdale, I don't know if Robbinsdale is going to change their vote or not based on this amendment. I do support their plight as well. But at this point, I really think the community in many ways doesn't support this. I think there's some in Minneapolis, Robbinsdale, and Crystal that don't. And I want to stick with what I believe that is the community wants. So there's where I'm at.
Thank you for your candid comments, and
You're welcome.
We know we have work to do. Councilmember.
I just wanted to chime in a little bit. You know, Brooklyn Park has a lot of stations in town potentially, and it really would have a huge impact, I think, in a good way on creating equity and bringing that consistent transit to our city. And so I think, you know, I haven't heard anything from any of my fellow council members or the mayor that said that they didn't want me to vote for this. I think it's incredibly important to get through this step so that we can get to those things and get to the details, because you can't do the details without this point. And I understand everyone's point of view, and I'll be honest, I think I said it before, I think this this particular route does a better job of serving the community than the previous route did. You know, I think I told you guys the story about how I was in the hospital and the people there were all excited about the potential. That's when the Green Line opened. And I think being able to serve the hospital and having it come down 81 instead of in the railroad corridor actually does a better job of serving the community. So I'm in full support of getting us through this resolution so that we can move to the details and actually get there. Because, you know, like other people, I've been involved in this process for a really long time and just really want this to come and get this done. So.
Thank you for that comment. And I know it's 9:30 and we've had a robust conversation and sharing of concerns, and we have our work cut out for us. It's not done, and I appreciate the thought that as we enter the green box, we have a lot of trust building and issues to resolve. With that, I'm going to call the question out of respect to everybody's time. We have a motion as amended on the floor. And I will call for a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No. Could we have a division of the House? Could we have
Roll call?
Could we have roll call so we know
Sure.
who voted what way?
We can do that. Liz, are you prepared to call the roll?
Councilmember Chambliss?
Aye.
Councilmember Lundy?
Commissioner.
Oh, just,
Oh,
that's okay.
Sorry,
I'll
Commissioner
take the
Lundy.
promotion. Aye.
Commissioner Fernando?
Aye.
Alternate Rebecca Fabumi?
Aye.
Alternate Councilmember Rosenquist?
Aye.
Mayor Blonigan?
No.
Mayor Adams?
Nay.
Alternate Councilmember Tanya West Hafner?
Aye.
Commissioner Becca Thompson?
Aye.
Alternate Ricardo Perez?
No.
Felicia Perry?
Aye.
Chair Zally?
Aye.
And alternate Jean Montañez?
No.
Okay. This resolution has been adopted. Thank you.